Just one more minute and we're going to go live.
You're live, Marco.
It says
All
live on
right.
the screen, yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us today, this afternoon, as we are going to be talking about the enticing Douro in Portugal, and not just the Douro Valley, not just Portugal itself, but how to see it, how to experience it, and what better way to experience this beautiful, magical place in Portugal than with AmaWaterways. And with me, I have Stephen Bajaka from AmaWaterways, who is going to be talking about the experience on the AmaWaterways for this amazing journey to see this, again, stunning region of Portugal. Stephen, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me, Marco. Always a pleasure.
Likewise, and thank you everybody for joining in. I think this will be a very exciting journey as we explore the itinerary from AmaWaterways on the Enticing Douro. Um, Beautiful pictures, beautiful experiences throughout. I am going to give the word to Stephen a little bit, but just to showcase a little bit more about Portugal as itself is an amazing destination. The river cruise in the Douro River is one of the highlights in the country, and I think the highlight within the highlight is to actually experience it aboard an AmaWaterway river cruise. So having said that, I'm going to help fill in some of the pre and post as we move forward. As some of you may know, Sagres Vacations is obviously the specialist for Portugal and Spain, and our experiences in Portugal really complement the AmaWaterways itinerary. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as we move on the itinerary. So Stephen, I'll let you go, and just I'll chime in at anytime we feel like we can add some more content to it.
It sounds good. We can always use your expertise. So we're gonna look at the Douro River. AmaWaterways sails many of the rivers, the waterways in Europe, but this is one of our most popular itineraries on the Douro River. So we take a river cruise ship. In this case, the brand new, built in 2019, the Ama Douro is the name of our ship, holds 104 passengers, and we sail along the Douro River, and everything is included in the pricing, the meals, the wine and beer on the ship with the meals. All the excursions are included. And you see here the Duro Valley, and it is one of the most naturally beautiful river valleys in all of Europe, full of color, and it's fertile, and you've got all your wine is grown in this area. It's just a beautiful trip, very unspoiled and very different. If any of the listeners have been on other river cruises on popular rivers like the Rhine or the Danube rivers, this is not that. This is the antithesis of that. Everything is laid back, unspoiled, naturally beautiful.
Yeah, I'm just going to add here too. Having been born in Portugal, about an hour south of the Douro River, I can tell you that rawness is really one of the main attractions, I think, for people to experience the river cruise with AmaWaterways, because you can see here in this picture here how quaint and still traditional it is, and it is still a very family-oriented area. You have wineries and vineyards, family-owned vineyards that have been in generations for 200-300 years, and it makes it a very localized experience, a very cultural experience where you can connect with the locals as you cruise up the river.
You said a mouthful. That is exactly right. And this is a great shot of us sort of leaving Porto. And again, another difference from sailing in other parts of Europe, where you're in the towns, you're in these bustling towns during the day, and the ships would sail at night. On the Douro, we do most of the sailing in the daytime because it's so beautiful. It's so incredibly beautiful. And everything that Marco just said is exactly what my focus would be as well. It's a cultural journey. All the vineyards are owned by family. They're all family-owned vineyards. They've been in the family for generations, and very laid back. And there's just so many neat things to do and see. We get off the ship every day. The ship is your floating hotel, and we take you to these places. Next slide there, Marco. And then landscapes. You just saw what Porto looks like, a very nice waterfront city with a lot of things to do. And then you can see as we sail along the Douro, you're going to just get all these changing landscapes. And thus, this is why we sail in the daytime here. And just beautiful, all the vineyards along the way, and old castles and manor homes and little villages. It's like going back in time. It's like going back to medieval times. It's really, I can't even articulate how pretty a cruise this is. So you will see things change from day to day. You'll see a lot of different colors. Just a naturally beautiful river valley.
No, it truly is. And if you're lucky if you're lucky to be there around the harvest time, which is typically late August, early September, you can actually see the farmers collecting the grapes. The whole process is really exciting to be able to experience as you're on the boat and you're seeing all the movement of the trucks and you're seeing all the grapes being transported from the vineyards to the holding facilities and so forth. So there's so much life to the valley. And again, it's all local, so it makes it even more interesting that it's not this big tourist sort of made up scenario.
Right. Very laid back. Here's the actual itinerary. Obviously not a map to scale, so don't hold me to anything here. But basically, I mean, you'd fly into Lisbon, and this is where Marco and his team could help you do some really interesting sightseeing. Lisbon and the Lisbon area, and then up to Porto. And then once on the river in Porto, you've got several stops. You've got Entre os Rios, Lamego, Regua, Pinau, Barca de Alva, and what else we had? That Castelo Rodrigo. I'm sure I'm pronouncing most of these wrong, so Marco, feel free to step in if I've butchered anything.
Those Portuguese classes have been doing really well for you.
Vega de Terron, and we actually do spend an afternoon. Cover your ears, Marco. We spend an afternoon in Spain, in Salamanca. That's a very
how dare you?
So we're looking. So we're now going to look at this itinerary and some of the activities that we do along the way.
So before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit about the activities that Sagres Vacations can offer to complement on the pre and the post, obviously for the river cruise. And one thing about Portugal that is well known is obviously the great wine, but also the amazing cuisine. And here's some experiences where you can kind of touch upon a cooking workshop with a Michelin star chef, and this can be done for 2 people, for a family, for a small group. And then down below you have biking in northern Portugal, which covers the area surrounding the Douro Valley as well, north of the Douro Valley as well, which is considered the border with Spain. So I think a lot of people today are looking to be able to connect with the destination. And one of the great ways to connect it is obviously through the wine, but through the food, and then to be able to be outside, to explore, to bike, to hike, to be able to see nature, and not worry about necessarily being surrounded by buses all the time or by cars or in a big city. And this experience where you can bike provides certainly that more of an exclusive type of feeling for those travelers. And then continuing on with the nature and the outdoors, horseback riding in Ponta de Lima, which is a northern city about an hour north of Porto, is an amazing Roman city. It's beautiful aqueducts here in the background. You can see the horses, and you can take the horses out for an afternoon for a couple of hours. Really fun experience for all ages. And then to complement that, for those who are interested in the arts, Filigree is a well-known Portuguese jewelry type. So it's actually a process on how to make jewelry. And you can see here on this heart-shaped pendant, this is all hand-woven. And in Portugal, there are still some jeweler masters that will do this. Some of these pieces take 2 months to complete. Very, very precise work. And actually, you can actually try your hand at it. So see, the next time you're in Ponta Lima or north of Portugal, you want to try your hand at one of these. You just have to stick around for a couple of months, and you can look just as nice as that one.
It sounds good.
Then we continue on. There's so many different places. Of course, with the AmaWaterway cruise, you're going to hit so many of the different spots on the Douro River between, as Stephen mentioned, with the wineries, the castles, these beautiful, quaint villages. But before you do that, you have the experience to see the city of Guimarange, which is the birthplace of Portugal. It is not sometimes common on a lot of itineraries because it gets obscured by Porto and Lisbon, the biggest cities. But Guimarães is an amazing city, smaller in stature as far as population, but very, very big in history. This is where the first king of Portugal was born, and that's why we call it the Cradle of Portugal, or the birthplace of the country. And then not far from it, in the city of Viana do Castelo, you have these stunning, stunning sunsets you can see here on this picture, and so much history there as well. And for a really localized experience, I mean, what better way to spend a day than walking the herd with a local farmer? And yes, that is something that a lot of clients do look for and ask for, because if you're coming from a big city, Boston, New York, LA, any of these big cities, you want to feel like you're actually out and about and exploring the countryside. So there's been a lot of requests, and we've had a lot of experiences where people go out with a farmer, get a lunch, and you be able to connect with nature. And it's very, very picturesque in the surrounding hills. And then you can overnight in the treehouse. So you can go from, stay before you start your beautiful luxury river cruise. You can actually stay in the treehouse outside of Porto as well. And then staying with some of the different experiences, you can do pottery and ceramic workshops as well as tile. These workshops are really hands-on, giving you the ability to create something with your hands that is a beautiful memento, a beautiful masterpiece of your stay in Portugal. Again, these are techniques that are century-old, still being taught today by a lot of times the same family that started these traditions, and you can walk away with a piece that you can present in your living room, your dining room, and so forth. And then down below here is the Passadiços do Paiva, which has won the last 4 years the world's leading adventure attraction. This is a great way to get out in the countryside, to explore nature before you start the river cruise in Porto, because it's not far from Porto itself, or Vila Nova Gaia, where the cruise starts. It is 7 kilometers, so shortly about 4.5, 5 miles of wooden walkways through lush forests, hidden waterfalls. It's places you cannot travel on a car or on the bus, or even by bike. So it's really meant to get you to connect with nature. And it won the leading adventure awards because it is so unique in its perspective. It follows the contours of the land through valleys, small mountains, again, waterfalls, and it brings you so much closer to nature. So really, really exciting adventure for those who really like to be outside. And then, of course, wine. I mean, that goes synonym with wine. With being Portuguese is drinking wine, and it's no. I should say it's a reflection of our day-to-day living is eating good food and drinking good wine. And one of the experiences, which I'm sure that Stephen will talk about too in his itinerary, is creating a winemaker, or being a winemaker for a day. We can actually create your own wine, and that is something to be desired, and something you can accomplish, where you can blend in different wines in these different vineyards, family-owned vineyards, and create your own label at the end of the day. That's an amazing experience for those wine connoisseurs, and even for those people who are not connoisseurs and just want to have that opportunity to make their own wine label for their tour that they're taking. And then, of course, the hike through Jerez National Forest. This is the biggest natural park in Portugal, in the north of Portugal, the border of Spain. Again, beautiful waterfalls, small valleys. You can see how pristine it is here. Beautiful lakes. You can do horseback riding here, a lot of active type of experiences. And all of these are meant to sort of complement the the river cruise that Stephen's talking about and the itinerary, the enticing Douro itinerary on either before or after. All of these activities, all of these places we just talked about are within driving distance. They're not far from the Douro River, so you can always get to these activities fast, experience them, and then either get on the river cruise or after the river cruise ends, actually be able to experience this without too much travel time. So now we can continue, Stephen. Sorry.
No, so that's perfect. It's a perfect dovetail. And what Marco's talking about is exactly right. Our river cruise is a 7-night experience, and most people would not go from the United States or Canada all the way to Portugal just for 7 nights. So that's why what Marco is showing you, that we call it pre and post land extensions. You probably want to do a 10-night or a 12-night or a 14-night, and fill those, the pre and post excursions up with some of these custom things that Marco and his team have put together for you. That's exactly the way that these vacations are supposed to go. So we handle the river cruise portion, and Marco and his teams handle the pre and the post land portion. For us, we would start here in Porto, lovely city. You can go to the next slide, Marco. I do believe that your office is it not Porto that your office is located?
Yeah. So thank you for that lead in. Yeah, our office is in the city of Porto. It is about 1.5 miles from where this picture is. It's called the Baixa, the lower part of the city, and we have our staff working from an office again very close to it. This is a beautiful area, Porto, and for those people who've been there, I'm sure they'll agree. This is this area, as well as the Douro Valley, is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So there's tremendous amount of history that people will be able to travel through and learn and discover on this itinerary.
I love this particular image, Marco, because look at the different shapes, sizes, and colors of all the buildings. That is so typical of Porto. I love the little balconies that everybody has, and you can see some detail there, and they're all different colors. I just love stuff like that. I think Porto is so interesting. Great restaurants, great wine bars, great places to, nooks and crannies, I call little places to explore when you're walking around on your own, and things to discover. I'm a big fan of Porto. So.
Yeah, and if I may, Stephen, one more thing I want to add about this picture here that some of the listeners may not be aware of. Because this is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the way, if you can see the houses here, obviously these are older homes, very traditional fishing, older people that have been in these buildings for 50, 60 years, and their families have been there for many more years beyond that. So what happens is the government does not allow redevelopment of these homes because they want to keep the traditions alive. They want to keep the facades the way it is. So this is still, even though it's a very well-known, and a lot of tourists who travel on the Baixa area will walk through the street where the houses are, this is still a very localized, a very local neighborhood where you will see the locals put the clothes out to dry. They're yelling across each other, saying hi, getting the bread, going to the local coffee. And
right.
That to me is a very localized experience. I call Porto's a local's big city because it still has a tremendous amount of those small neighborhoods.
Yeah, and I spied here in this particular photograph two different churches. One in the lower right corner, a smaller church there, and then one in the top left corner. So, and we haven't mentioned that Portugal is a predominantly Catholic country, and as you travel around, it's quite evident that it is a Catholic country. So. Okay, we can, I think, move on then from that slide. These are the Azulejo. Is that correct pronunciation, or is it a soft J?
Azulejos.
Azulejos, okay.
Azulejo. No, very good though.
These are tiles that came over from the Moors, actually, in the 13th century. Came over to Portugal and Spain. Became popular more in the 15th and 16th century. And it's a style of tile work. There's sort of like metallic materials that have been sort of built in here. Typically, they are these kind of pastel blues and white. And they used to be back in the older times, they would be mostly in churches and cathedrals, but now you'll find them pretty much everywhere as you go throughout cities in Portugal. You'll find them in train stations, banks, nice buildings, and they often tell some kind of story, a historical story, and you find them everywhere, and they're quite beautiful. We can go to the next slide. There's Pinhão. I love this. I love this town. Pinhão is right where the Douro River meets the Pinhão River, and I would say one of the most popular. If you're just Googling, the Douro, and you'll find what comes up first are these images of Pinhão. It's the home of where a lot of the port wine is grown, and just you see these lush, slope terraces here of vineyards, and you see so many images of Pinhão because it is to me, it's one of the prettiest towns that you'll visit along the way. And it's just beautiful. There's so many images we could have chosen for this presentation, but they're all beautiful. We spend a day here. We do an excursion. We do a lot of dining and wine tasting off of the ship on this itinerary. So obviously meals are included on the ships, but where we are just lends itself to going out and eating with locals and doing wine tasting with locals. And, we'll see some of that in the next few slides, I believe.
Yeah, and that's one of the many reasons why we love the AmaWaterways product is because of the connection with the local. And especially, being Portuguese, we want everybody to come to the country and eat well and drink better and make friends and see everything and experience it. And, I think the way you designed the itinerary to be able to have those offsite meals and be able to connect with places here in Pinhão or Régua or Porto, or as you go up, that's a tremendous asset to the itinerary and provides a great value added for those customers because it does complement everything that Portugal is well known for: the hospitality, the great service, but the food and the wine and so forth.
So here's an example of what we're talking about. On this particular evening, we have dinner at Quinta da Aveleda. And quinta is a simple Portuguese word. It can mean manor home or wine estate, or even, I think, even farm in some cases. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. And in this case, correct me if I'm wrong here, but Aveleda is also a type of white wine, right?
It is.
That's indigenous to the region here. I remember it being a very drinkable, sort of a crisp white wine, not very sweet. The kind of white wine that I like to drink, but this is what we're talking about. So we take, this would be exclusive to the guests of AmaWaterway, and we would take people in groups of say 15 or 20, and they would have dinner at this estate and local fare, meet the locals, meet the family that's running the winery, and just a great event. You get to know the guests on the ship more. You get to meet the locals, and these are the reason I think that the Douro itinerary for us at AmaWaterways is one of our most popular itineraries. The itinerary itself is typically sold out. In a normal year, this itinerary would run from April through the end of October, maybe end the first week of November, and usually sold out. We recently built a second ship, the Amaduro, the one we're talking about here, just because the first ship, the Amavida, was always sold out. So two ships do this. So just a great experience.
Yeah, and it's also a great just a great tidbit if you are local to a Portuguese liquor store, just a regular liquor store around where you live, you will be able to find Veleda, because it is one of the biggest exported white wine of Portugal. They do a very good production that gets sent over to the US, Canada, and other countries. So in this case, you could actually try the wine at home and then be able to go to the winery where they actually serve the wine. So that's an amazing experience to tie everything together.
That is a very good point, Marco, because you can then maybe um, get a taste for that wine or get your palate around that wine and then be looking forward to it when you get over there. In this case, we have a lunch experience at Quinta da Avesada.
Great.
And this is nice because it really is authentic in that a local band will come and play the Portuguese music, and you're outside and you're with the family that runs the estate. And Marco, you'd know more about Portuguese music than me, but I just always found it interesting that the accordion is so prominently featured in Portuguese music because it's so different from other music you'd hear, other types of music you'd hear in the region, say Spain or someplace else. So
It definitely is, and it's definitely predominantly a Northern Portuguese musical instrument. You will find it a lot more in places like Viana do Castelo, where I showed you that beautiful sunset, which is not far from the Douro Valley. So everything around Porto, the Douro Valley itself, but then the smaller cities north, it's sort of a traditional. You mentioned earlier about Portugal being a predominantly Catholic country. Because of that, there are a lot of religious feasts. And the Portuguese, with any kind of feast, we just like music, food, and wine. So any sort of excuse to get the accordion out, start drinking and eating, and all of the beat goes together after you drink a couple of bottles of Leda and others as well. But yeah, absolutely, the accordion is always present, and especially during the harvest, because one of the things I think that makes it really unique, and again, using the word localized, is that a lot of these wineries, when it's harvest time, they will actually ask the locals to come in and help them with the traditional process of making wine, which is stomping the feet, with on the grapes and all of the process that goes along with it. So, and the way they pay the locals is by actually feeding them, and along the food is obviously the music where they're dancing around.
right.
So if you have clients that are doing this, they can actually participate, and it's a very festive, very, very fun atmosphere.
Very authentic, and you can see right in this particular image, our guests are just standing there with with the local musicians drinking a wine and clapping to the beat of the music. This is the true experience. And again, there's only 100 passengers on the ship, so not a big ship. And we're breaking people up into groups of 12 or 15, let's say. So the experience is exclusive, it's authentic, and just so rich in culture. Just a great experience. And then port wine. So we can't say enough about port wine. You can't go to this part of Portugal and not have we have several different port wine tasting experiences. I think most people think that a port wine is only red wine. It's not. You have it's mostly red wine, but there's rosé and there's some white as well. And then you have the aged port wine, which is what's it called? The tawny, which is the type that I can get my palate around. You have to sort of get a taste for port wine. It can be super sweet, sort of like a dessert wine, but I like the aged port better, my own personal taste. And it is fun to go to these tastings and to learn about it, just like wine tastings anywhere. But I'm a wine guy. I love wine, and I recently attended a port tasting here in New England not that long ago, and the gentleman just knew a lot about it and had a blast. Just had a blast. And to be able to do this with that background now, look at the background where these ladies are standing, would just be phenomenal. And again, look at the slopes there. That is just, it almost looks like someone painted that to me. So, and that's really what it looks like. That's not a touched up, photo done by our marketing team or anything like that. So just a great experience. Marco, I'll let you add your own thoughts about port wine.
Well, no, I think you've said it well. The port wine is certainly the epicenter of the Douro Valley. This is the main export that's coming out of this region, and again, I think I might have mentioned this before, but it is the world's oldest demarcated wine region. So this is a wine that has tremendous amount of history, and it came out of necessity because the local farmers back in the 15th, 16th century, they were selling wines to obviously survive economically. They were selling wines to ship out to Britain, in this case to England, through the Douro River out through the North Sea to Great Britain. And that's why today, when you do take the cruise on AmaWaterways up to the Douro River, you will see vineyards with English surnames attached to it, because there is that history of the Portuguese with the English, especially around the wine, that dated back almost 500-600 years.
Right.
And just as a side note, the oldest international alliance in history is actually between the Portuguese and the British, and it was celebrated with wine at the time. So wine is not just the byproduct of the region. It was and still is to a lot of these small vineyards a necessity for them to be able to carve out their existence and to survive economically. But like you, I like my tawnies. And especially if you're there during the summer and the spring on a nice, because it can get pretty warm in the valley, I would suggest ask for port tonic, which is the port version of a gin tonic, which is white port with tonic, and it is just refreshing, just hits the right spot. It's really an amazing drink. I don't think it gets as much publicity as it should.
Good job. Good job. Okay. That's just another photograph of a red port there. There are several wine tastings of port wine on this itinerary, so no shortage there. You'll come back and you'll be somewhat of a port expert, which is a good thing. I think the next one is Vino Verde.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, my recollection of the whites is that not super sweet. They're more crisp. They're newer wines. Like they don't they don't sit in a cask for a super long time. This is the kind of white wine that I drink, whether it's from Portugal or France or wherever. I like these sort of crisp white wines, almost citrusy kind of tannins or flavors to them. And we do some wine tastings with this as well. And what we need is variety. And this is the type of itinerary that gives you all different types of wine to taste, and you figure out what's best on your palate, and that's fine. And we carry the same local wines on the ship too. So in the evening, if you're back on the ship, we carry these wines as well, and you can ask for the wines, whether red or a blush or a rosé or a white. You can ask for those wines on the ship as well.
Mm-hmm.
Then codfish. Now I have a smile on my face because where Marco and I live about 25 minutes north of Marco, but you could find probably in about 25 eating establishments between where you and I live, Marco, codfish on the menu, right? Because
Absolutely.
because we live in an area in Massachusetts where there are quite a few Portuguese American, Azorians, and so on. And codfish has a unique place in the cuisine of the Portuguese people. Because the Portuguese were such great fishermen and sailors, they would go as far, this goes back to the 14th, 15th, 16th century, they would go as far as Newfoundland and catch codfish. But it had to stay, it had to keep on the ship. So they would salt it, they would cure it with salt, they'd pickle it in salt. And Marco, you mentioned earlier about the wine and how the British had this relationship with the Portuguese back in the day, and that extended to their fishing industry. The British would actually sail with them and protect their fishing fleets, and in return, the Portuguese would give Britain salt because it was something else that was Portugal was known for. But you would find typically codfish, salted cod, with vegetables and potatoes or perhaps rice. And there's many ways you can make this. You can make it in a stew. I'm getting hungry now. I haven't had dinner yet. but it's really good. I've had it locally. I have friends that bring it over. Like if we have gatherings in the summertime, they'll bring it over. So I'm very familiar with codfish. It's very good, and I think it's a staple of the middle class or the working class diet in many places in Portugal. That just keeps it alive. It's almost like a revered dish of the working class, right? Would you say that?
It certainly is, Stephen. And I will add, it is such a staple in, if you come to Portugal, there's million and one bookstores and obviously even online, and many of the books about Portuguese cuisine, some of them are actually just dedicated to codfish. And they will tell you that there's 1,001 different ways of making codfish. And it truly is, because both my grandma and my mom have done probably 600 of the 1,000 different ways, and they're still going at it, because that's the beauty about Portuguese food, is that every region will put a different twist on it. So the codfish that you will have in Porto may be slightly different than the one you will have in Pinhão, than you'll have in Lisbon and the Algarve, and especially and definitely in the Azores and Madeira. So each one will put a different twist on it. So that's why you will see codfish on the menu everywhere, and it is a very local staple of the villagers. So it's not just this main city environment. I grew up eating codfish in the village where I was raised, but then moving to a big city, we still ate codfish, and it was sort of tradition. And we just passed the holidays, but for Christmas, that is our Christmas Eve dinner is traditional codfish. That is a Portuguese sort of tradition itself, is to have codfish for Christmas. But yeah, you will find a Catfish Museum not far from Porto, actually, where it celebrates what Stephen just mentioned, the Portuguese fishermen going out. Because some of you people may perceive that the waters off Portugal are rich in codfish. They are not. They are actually traveling out as far as Newfoundland, as you mentioned, or Norway, and sometimes close to Iceland, to bring the fish in so that us Portuguese can eat it and maintain the 1,001 different ways we can cook it. So it truly is Portuguese, but not from Portugal. It's similar to the Azulejo, right? It came from the Moors, and the Portuguese
Right.
sort of brought it to a different level.
Right. That's great. It's a great story. Now this is my absolute favorite. I'm not even going to try. Why don't you pronounce this one for me? Because I'm either going to use the S or not use the S improperly at the end.
I think you just have to recognize and eat it. No matter how you say it, you will see it plenty of times in your cruise up and down the river, and I'm sure on board as well. You may have the opportunity to taste these. These are called pastéis de nata. The word pastéis is the Portuguese word for pastry. So you may hear that word throughout, associated with other cupcakes, other pastries as well. De nata means of custard. So these are custard.
Egg custard. I love egg
custard.
I love egg custard. Oh my God.
And
So good.
they are so good. And this is sort of the national dessert of Portugal. You will see them throughout the country. There is some neighborhood friendly fighting about which one has the best one, because they're all different variations. Lisbon, of course, is more of the marketable pastéis nata, because they have a century, over 200 years of traditions of turning around these pastries, which they call pastéis de Belém, which is from Lisbon. But you will see these in the Douro Valley, you'll see them in Porto, you'll see them in Aveiro, you'll see them in every small city, large city, and they are absolutely delicious, especially if you get them while they're warm, because they are crispy, and the outer shell is crispy, but then it is just so moist on the inside. And again, it's
good.
Egg. It's so good. It goes well with a tawny. Just do very, very well.
And it's not low calorie. Okay, just so
No, not at all.
It's not diet food. Okay, but
no, not at all. But there's no scales on the ship, as you right.
Great point, Marco.
There you go.
And then I think we have one or two more slides. So cork products. So I think we all know, I think general knowledge is that, most of the cork for wine in the world comes from Portugal. But I think as more and more big wineries go away from cork made from actual wood or bark, And you see big wineries now with a lot of screw tops on your whites, and you see this. I don't know what, there's some kind of synthetic, this like hard rubber now that they use in certain wines. You see more and more cork products coming from Portugal, and these handbags are beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful, and when you're there, you can get them for a bargain. They're actually quite popular. You can buy them here in the States, but they're expensive. They're over $100 for a bag, and they're obviously they're all kinds of different patterns and and floral designs and things like that. They're just beautiful, and they're quite they're quite handy. But again, you can buy most of your things over when you're over there. You can buy a lot of souvenirs and different things for very good prices in Portugal. But when you get back here, it's a different story. So just some of the other things that you can buy when you get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've covered a lot of the main Portuguese sort of exports or the items that people are may be familiar with in relation to Portugal. Of course, the wine, the pastéis de nata, which they'll recognize, the codfish, and then cork. I think, and obviously cork has that intimate relationship with the wine because the Portuguese had to figure out a way to use the raw materials, which is abundant in Portugal, to actually top the bottles, right? And that's where cork became such a big product because of the mass production of Portuguese wine, and then other countries also adopted it. And even though, as Stephen, you mentioned, there is a newer adaptation to these plastic caps. I think you will find a lot of the traditional vineyards, which is abundant in Portugal. The people who have been doing this process for many, many, many generations within their family, they're going to stick to cork because they know that it's a very safe and very efficient product to complement the wine. But to your point, as far as the bags, yeah, absolutely widely available in Portugal in many shops. You can get them for a bargain. And these are great bags because some of them are large enough to get 2-3 bottles of wine in there. So you can carry them around, have your own picnic on your day off. And they're great. My wife has 2 of these bags, and she's always looking for a third one, so I try to keep hold of the credit card. So but yeah, she loves it. It's washable, so it's great upkeep, and they look very nice. I mean, they
Yeah,
very
they're very smart
fashionable
looking.
oriented. Yep.
Very fashionable.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
And I think we've come to the end of it.
So I hope everyone enjoyed and got some information out of there. It's a combination of what Marco does and what we do makes just for a fantastic vacation experience.
Yes, and thank you, Stephen, for doing this presentation with us. And obviously, we know Portugal very well, and we also are very happy that AmaWaterways has an excellent product in Portugal because we can complement that again with these pre or post extensions. And we know that, and obviously having my own experience aboard an AmaWaterway river cruise, we know how excellent the service is, how your staff goes beyond just the normal level of service to make sure that each client is taken care of. And I think that's important even more so today than before because let's face it, we're on vacation. We don't want to have to worry about small things or big things. And I think your staff does a great job of anticipating the needs. And that's not a skill that's easily taught, but I think they have a great foundation. And of course, then when you marry it with the excellent product on board, with the itinerary itself, with the offsite experiences, I think it's an amazing experience for those who can get on board because as you mentioned, it does book really fast. So we invite anybody who's listening to give us a call so we can help you book your next AmaWaterways river cruise.
Awesome.
Very good. So once again, thank you everybody for joining us. Stephen, thank you again for helping us tonight. I'm sure we will be chatting in the near future.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, and we'll have to have a couple of tawny ports to. Sounds like a plan. All right. Well, thank you again, and have a good night.
Good night. Boa noite.
Boa noite.